Although it is generally considered the pump of the cardiovascular system, I like to think of the heart as being two pumps that just happen to sit side by side, because the right side of the heart takes part in what's called the pulmonary circuit of circulation. It's taking blood that's been used by the body and has low oxygen content and pumping that blood to the lungs. It does not pump the blood directly to the left side of the heart, rather it pumps the blood to the lungs first. At the lungs, we drop off carbon dioxide, we pick up oxygen, and the freshly oxygenated blood then returns to the left side of the heart as part of what's called the systemic circuit of circulation, taking freshly oxygenated blood from the lungs and pumping it out to the rest of the body. The heart itself is made out of multiple layers of tissue. It's surrounded by connective tissue pericardium, a thick, fibrous pericardium towards the outside, and a thinner, serous pericardium towards the inside. The serous pericardium folds over on itself and provides a small space that surrounds the heart, called the pericardial cavity, that's filled with fluid that acts like a lubricant so that as the heart contracts, it doesn't cause friction. As that serous pericardium folds back on itself, it forms the outer layer of the wall of the heart, called the epicardium. It's continuous with the serous pericardium, but now it's part of the wall of the heart. Deep to that epicardium is a thick layer of tissue called the myocardium. This is the layer that actually contracts and is made out of cardiac muscle. Deep to the myocardium is a thin layer of tissue called the endocardium, which is a type of endothelial tissue, a lining that goes around the chambers of the heart that helps prevent oxygen and nutrients from being leached out of the blood in the chambers and going to the myocardium. Cardiac muscles themselves are linked together in long chains. These chains are arranged in spirals and circular bundles of cells. This links all of the parts of the heart together. It also allows for contractions of one of these cells to spread directly to the cell near it, and so on down the chain. This causes waves of contraction that can spread from one region of the heart to the other. Within the heart, we can see that the human heart has four major chambers, two chambers towards the top that are called the atria, a right atrium and a left atrium, and two chambers towards the bottom that are called the ventricles, a right ventricle and a left ventricle. The atria and the ventricles are separated from each other by valves, the atrioventricular valves, or the one on the right side can be called the tricuspid valve, while the one on the left can be called the bicuspid or the mitral or mitral valve. The ventricles are then separated from the next major blood vessels by what are called the semilunar valves. The right ventricle has a pulmonary semilunar valve because blood leaving the right ventricle would go into the pulmonary trunk next. And on the left side, the left ventricle has an aortic semilunar valve because blood leaving the left ventricle would travel into the aorta next. As we mentioned earlier, blood does not generally diffuse to the myocardium from the chambers of the heart itself, for several reasons. First, the blood in the chambers on the right side of the heart is low in oxygen in the first place and wouldn't be able to provide the energy necessary for the right side of the heart to do its job. Second, the endocardial lining is preventing this leaching of oxygen and nutrients into the myocardium. And the myocardium itself is too thick to allow for diffusion to happen efficiently. Because of that, the muscular tissue of the heart needs its own blood supply. The blood is delivered to those cardiac muscles by the coronary arteries. Blockage of a coronary artery is what leads to a myocardial infarction, otherwise known as a heart attack. That blood is then drained away from the cardiac muscles through a series of cardiac veins before emptying into the right atrium as part of circulation.